Question number 11, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Defence. Will he rule out, quote, systemic health and safety issues throughout the Defence Force, end quote, being a cause of Defence Force fatalities in light of revelations surrounding the non-combat deaths of Defence personnel over the last 3 years? If not, why not?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Jonathan Coleman.
Mr Speaker, I'm not ruling such issues in and I'm not ruling them out. What I can say is that there is an extensive program of health and safety work which has been underway for some time. I also note that the final Court of Inquiry report and recommendations relating to the Private Ross tragedy are yet to be released.
Mr Speaker, supplementary.
Supplementary question, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Do the interim findings of the Court of Inquiry into the tragic death of Private Michael Ross, which the Minister has been briefed on, suggest that there was not just one, but a whole catalogue of errors and mistakes that contributed to Michael Ross's death, and the loss of life of Michael Ross was entirely avoidable?
Honourable Jonathan Coleman.
Mr Speaker, look, I want to acknowledge first that this was a very real tragedy and there will be very hard lessons to be learnt from this. The gist of the report in the Sunday Star Times is indeed correct, and it looks like there were multiple safety failings in what is a very tragic case, and my condolences go to the family, because I think we will find that there have been major errors which need to be corrected so that this can never happen again.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary
Mr.
question,
Speaker.
the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, how does he explain the catalogue of errors that he has been advised on that led to Private Michael Ross's death, which included, first of all, the boat that he was travelling in not being inflated so that he was thrown out of it. Secondly, its engine breaking down so they couldn't turn around to pick him up. Thirdly, the fact that the gas canister that would have inflated his life jacket was empty and hadn't been checked. Fourthly, the fact that the life jacket was in fact a Navy jacket, not suitable for the equipment that Army personnel hold. Fifthly, the fact that the safety boat was not accompanying the boat that Private Ross was travelling in. And sixthly, when it finally turned up, it didn't have the complement of crew necessary to actually provide any assistance.
Honourable Jonathan Coleman.
Well, Mr Speaker, I'm not going to deny any of those facts, but what I am going to say is that I'm awaiting the final Court of Inquiry recommendations, which will be acted on. I also want to say that the police have investigated this. There's a separate MBIE investigation which has the power to lay charges, and a military police investigation, and this is a very serious matter which has to be taken seriously.
Mr Speaker, supplementary question.
Supplementary question,
Mr Speaker,
Honourable Phil Goff.
Does the Minister recall the findings of the Court of Inquiry into the Iroquois crash on Anzac Day that pointed out that the crew were neither adequately prepared nor trained, there were deficiencies in the orders, management and operational environment within which the Air Force at the time were operating on, and that these were key contributing factors in that tragedy? And what lessons have been learned and what changes have been made in the 3 years that have elapsed since then?
Well, what I can say about the Iroquois crash is that there were 6 key causes, basically relating to culture, to oversight of orders and to adherence to orders. One of the key things that was said in the report findings was that the genesis of that accident goes back 10 years to 2001, when changes were made in an attempt to make our operations more efficient and cost-effective. At the time, 2 layers of flying command and supervision, along with staff support, were removed from the organisation. That was in 2001. Order. I can also, you wanted to know what has been done in the period since. Now, this will take some time, but I'm quite happy to relay the answer for the House if the member so wishes.
If the member wants supplementary question, you've order. No, you're only required to ask one part of the supplementary question. Supplementary question, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, has it occurred to him that a culture where operational orders were not being followed and basic mistakes were being made might have been, in part at least, an outcome of the fact that at the time of Private Michael Ross's death, the morale in the Defence Force was the lowest ever on record, according to his own surveys, that there'd been a massive loss of skilled and experienced people of over 1,000 Defence Force personnel that year, and that there was a situation where a very high level of attrition, in fact the highest in recent history, meant that people were in a mindset and lacked the training that allowed that catalogue of errors to have occurred.
Honourable Jonathan
Well, Mr.
Coleman.
Speaker, I completely reject those assertions and think it's pretty low that an absolute tragedy would be utilised by that member to try and...
Point of order. Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Order.
That is a comment that is bound to cause disorder in the House. Michael Ross happened to have been a family friend, and I despise the Minister for making that sort of accusation.
Order. Order. It would be helpful if the Minister could address the question.
Well, I've made my point that this tragedy has nothing to do with attrition and morale, and I will reassert my point that this member should not be attempting to make political hay out of a tragedy.
That is a sufficient answer.
Your question, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr. Speaker, is it satisfactory that Crib 19, on which Corporal Doug Hughes took his own life, was deployed when the warrant officer responsible for pre-deployment training said that they had not been adequately trained, that they'd received 60% of the training that they had needed, and actually one of the components that was missing from the training was identification of stress and management of stress? Why did the Minister allow that to happen, and what inquiry has he done into that fact?
Honourable Jonathan Coleman.
Mr. Speaker, the member knows that what he's asserting there is actually incorrect. The warrant officer's report, which he refers to...
Point of order. Point of order. Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr. Speaker, I want to replay a point of order from yesterday. You know that there is only one way of suggesting that members have breached privilege, and to suggest that a member had said something in the House that they know is incorrect is a breach of privilege. It's long been ruled by speakers that you cannot make an accusation that a member is doing that, as that member just did, and actually as members did yesterday.
Thank you. Can I just say we're dealing with what is a very sensitive issue. I'm going to invite the member to ask his question again because it's now passed by quite some time.
Mr. Speaker, is it satisfactory that Crib 19, on which Corporal Doug Hughes lost his life, was deployed when the warrant officer responsible for the pre-deployment training of that crib is on record as saying that the group was not adequately trained? They had done 60% of the training, but he had no option but to deploy them. And is it true that one of the components that they had not received training on in pre-deployment was actually the identification of stress and management of stress, which were obviously relevant to Corporal Hughes taking his own life?
Honourable Jonathan Coleman.
No.
Question number 12, Dr. Kennedy Graham.